Good morning, everyone, the founders and all the other representatives of the AI startup ecosystem. I welcome you to the Voice Innovation Challenge information webinar. This challenge is brought to you by Voice, which is Vodafone Intelligent Solutions, and also in partnership with NASCOM and the Telangana AI mission. My name is Praveen Mokapati, and I'm the lead for the Telangana AI mission. As a part of the state's charter, we work closely with various stakeholders to enhance AI adoption. In particular, we are very glad to be working with Voice and use this challenge as a platform to enable that adoption objectives and provide this as a platform that offers opportunities to startups as well. Now, you've heard the name Voice, and I think it's important for us to sort of understand Voice as an organization. Voice is a global team. It's a global organization with over 24,000 highly skilled people across about 28 countries. In other words, Voice is like Vodafone's strategic partner of choice, and this encompasses talent, technology, and transformation. And it's an organization that has been there in place since 2006. I won't go into the details, but I would allow our guests to talk about it. But just so we understand it well, today's session is more to provide you with an understanding about this challenge, the various opportunities that are there for your startup to engage with Voice, and also the many benefits that you can expect if you're able to ace this challenge. So to kick it off, I welcome Dilip Manepalli into the spotlight. Dilip is the general manager of Edge, and Edge is essentially the unit within Voice. And I'll let him introduce himself and also tell us more about Voice and Edge. Dilip, over to you. Dilip, you are on mute.
Yeah. So thanks, Praveen, for setting the context. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to interact with the startup community and be inspired and touched by the energy and the passion that you sort of bring on the table. Just to quickly introduce myself, this is Dilip. I am the general manager, part of the leadership team of Voice. Voice is Vodafone Intelligent Solutions. It's a strategic arm of Vodafone Group. Vodafone Group is roughly 100,000 employees, and we are 1/4 of Vodafone Group, which is roughly around 25 to 30,000 employee base. Now, Voice is a shared services arm of Vodafone Group. So any transformation that happens across the group happens generally via Voice. I'm part of a team called Edge. Edge is an in-house disruptor of Voice, which is very, very startup-like within the corporate ecosystem. The Edge agenda is to disrupt Voice and Vodafone at large. Our objective is to collaborate with the outside world, bring technology in, and create a 10x monumental impact. Now, let me differentiate. We are not an innovation arm. We are a disruption arm. Now, what's the difference? We've all seen, the world transitioning from the QWERTY-based mobile phones to smart mobile phones. And essentially, in this transition, what has happened is the old has become obsolete. And that's essentially what Edge does, brings something new where the old cease to exist, right? And via which we are able to create a 10x monumental impact. Our approach to disruption is very simple and straightforward. It's experiment and learn fast. We typically collaborate, like I said, with outside world, the entire global startup ecosystem, bring technologies in, do a small experiment. If the experiment is successful, scale it up across Voice and possibly Vodafone at large. Otherwise, let go of that particular experiment. Yeah, that's a quick brief about Edge, and we've been of course working in technologies like AI, ML, attention computing, metaverse, conversation AI space, generative AI space, and lots more. Of course, during the course of this conversation, we're going to talk more or dwell deeper into this. Yeah, over to Praveen.
All right, thanks, Dilip. That was helpful, and it's important to distinguish between disruption and innovation, and I'm glad that you talked about that. Now, if anybody has any questions about voice or edge or anything about what Dilip mentioned, please use the chat feature to type out your questions. We'll be happy to have that answered towards the latter half, or maybe even between. So please keep the interaction going over the chat or the Q&A feature. Now, Dilip. Let's dive into the two use cases that we have for the challenge, right? So one, on the webpage, we have what we're calling as improving the speed to competency for customer care agents. And the second one is talent Uberization for the gig workforce. Now, obviously, there's a lot of thought that went into formulating these use cases. I know that you and I have been chatting about this for quite some time, but for the benefit of those who are joining in, and also since the session is being recorded, this will also be listened in at a later point in time by some of the other founders. It'll be useful to understand the background and the context behind both these use cases, and really how startups should be looking at solutioning or offering solutions to these use cases.
Sure. So yeah, we can perhaps start with the first use case, which is the speed to competency. But before that, I want to share with all of you that at Voice, we are extremely eager to collaborate. We are open to ideas. We're always looking across the globe in terms of, who are those cutting edge startups who could sort of add value to Voice and Vodafone. The first use case that we're sort of looking at is speed to competency. And as the name suggests, it's very simple, right? An employee joins, reaches the peak productivity, could be sort of shorten the speed to competency. Now, this use case is primarily for the customer care vertical. So within Voice, we've got a vertical called Care, which is nothing but a customer care. Imagine this as a contact center of the future. The contact center or the care vertical is roughly 1/4 of Voice, with roughly around 5 to 6,000 agent base. Now, one of the key challenges that we have seen is speed to competency, and there are two components to this. One is in terms of when an agent joins, right? So day one of joining to day one of actually working on a particular process, right? Now this time we want to shorten it. It's typically, it could hover between 1 to 3 months roughly, but could be sort of shorten it to, let's say, 2 weeks and make an agent productive and active on a particular process. So that's first component. The second component is once the agent starts working, we've seen roughly takes 1.5 years for agent to reach the peak productivity levels. Now, how do we define productivity levels, right? And I'm sure some of you must be quite inquisitive around this. Now, an agent's productivity, typically in the contact center domain, is looked at in a couple of matrices. One is the average handling time. So what's the customer care vertical sort of look like? So let me give you a broader overview. And I think that will set the context for you. So contact center, and I'm sure all of you would have reached out to contact centers earlier. So it's got primarily divided into two verticals. One is a front office, where an agent would directly interact with the customer. Now, there are two sub-channels within that. Either the agent could talk to the customer through the voice channel, right, which is handling the incoming or the outbound calls. Or second, it could be the web chat channel, right? So this is the front office. And the back office is where all the backend activities happen. Now, let me give you a small example that you could relate to. Let's say you are a customer and you've got you want to enhance your, let's say, postpaid credit limit. Now, you would reach out to a contact center via a web chat or call up the customer care helpline. You will speak to an agent. Agent would take in the request. Now, this request goes to the back office. The back office agent would then, onto the system, enhance the customer limit, right? So the front office and the back office verticals operate in tandem to cater to any service request. So that's how, in a quick overview, the customer care landscape works. Now, coming back to the speed to competency, we want the agent to start operating and reach the peak productivity, let's say in 2 months' time? Could it happen? Today, the timelines for this is roughly around 1.5 years. Could we cut short this journey from 1.5 years to, let's say, 2 months? Now, this is not as easy as it sounds. And of course, the entire life cycle of this needs to be looked at. Now, what's the life cycle contain? So an agent joins, let's say, voice. The first process is the onboarding process. So we're looking at solutions which would completely disrupt the onboarding process. Could it become, let's say, touchless? Could it become humanless? The onboarding process, could it become smart, efficient? Maybe could be done in a couple of days' time. The second process is, of course, the learning and development. Now, one big trend which is happening in the L&D landscape is how do you make learning personalized, right? Personalized to the needs of the learner. It could be because each learner has got different style, different pace, different preference. Could there be a AI or ML powered L&D platform which could sort of, customize to an agent's pace, style, and ability to comprehend? And could it have gamification? Could it be made interesting compared to the traditional ways of looking at L&D? How do we make the L&D more engaging, effective, which could sort of lead to accelerated skill development? The third important component, once, let's say, an agent joins, and this is particularly true for the front office agents who interact with the customer, we're also looking at cutting edge agent assist tools. So when an agent sort of is talking to a customer's got lots of queries. Now today, what's the tradition? We've got traditional knowledge management system. So let's say you're talking about enhancing the customer limit. Then agent is going to type, let's say, enhancing customer credit limit on the system. The system is going to throw few articles, few FAQs. So it's quite traditional. Could it be an AI powered agent assist tool which could make the customer experience to the next level and also enhance the speed to competency? Another area to be sort of looked at is, could you have a scenario based learning? Let's say you've got a AI powered customer and an agent has got, let's say, a opportunity to sort of interact with this AI and hone his skills. It could be communication skills, it could be another. So we are looking at the entire life cycle, which could cut down the speed to competency. Essentially, we want our agents to be productive. Could we cut down in terms of the timelines? Could we cut down the costs involved in this? Performance analytics is another key area that we are looking at, and the larger chunk in terms of how do we keep the agent engaged. And that's, in short, what we're looking at: speed to competency. So from your hiring to reaching the peak productivity time, which has got two key components. Like I said, A, when an agent joins and starts working the day one, right? So day one of joining to day one of working. So that's one phase of it. And from day one working to becoming productive. So we are looking at the entire gamut to reduce the speed to competency. I'll just take a quick pause here and see if all of you've got any questions.
All right, thanks, Dilip. So there's a question that is coming through from one of the startup founders. They work with the learners, and this is broadly in the context of teaching to communicate in English, and they use their autonomous and a proprietary voice program where they use a combination of mobile phones and the Echo Dot device, I suppose, and this is, as you would imagine, and I think this is coming from a point of view where there is cross-language skilling for agents that tends to happen. And this is more about teaching to communicate in English, and they seem to have a solution there. Is this something that would be of interest, is the question?
Absolutely. And I think that's one area that we are keenly looking from a voices point of view. Essentially, how do you eliminate language barriers in the world of shared services operations? That I would say one of the top 3 problem statements that we want to solve. How do you eliminate? How do we make it more global? Now, in the contact center domain, of course, Praveen talked about that we cater to over 28 markets, and that talks about complexity of multiple languages. Now, could you leverage on platforms which could train people better on languages? Absolutely a great use case. I'll go a step beyond that. Could the agent speak any language, and can we add a layer which could sort of translate and make it, cross border? That's also another area that we're sort of looking into. So any solutions in this domain, either enabling agents to learn languages quicker. It would be amazing to see if English speaking agent could also converse in German in a matter of, let's say, 3 weeks, if that can happen. And that would sort of, from a voice standpoint, what it would mean from a shared services standpoint is we could sort of leverage on our geographical footprints. Let's say somebody sitting in Egypt and India are major centers for us, being leveraging on the cost arbitrage. So we could sort of leverage on these sites or centers and serve our global customers.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think that's the holy grail, wherein we're talking about people communicating in their own native language, talking to somebody who doesn't speak that native language, is listening in their own native language. Like it could be an Arabic speaker, a customer, and a native Indian agent in Hindi who understands Hindi. Arabic to Hindi, it is essentially speech to text. And then there is the translation happening in real time. Just imagine that, right? And possibilities are amazing where it gets translated into Hindi, then text to speech. The agent is listening to that in real time and then responding again back and forth. And these are all very much, possible. But I think, I'm sure there are a few solutions that are there in the space, but then are they already ready is really the ask. And if such kind of solutions are there, then, we'd be more than welcome to facilitate that for these startups. There's one more question coming through, actually a couple more. So there's a startup and the founder is Viplav, is asking, they have built a solution to reduce the mean time to resolution, MTTR, as a metric that I suppose is a metric that's tracked in contact centers. And this they do by providing an AI-powered solution where their algorithm, I suppose, is listening to the live call in English and also a couple of other Indian languages. Would it be useful? I would assume yes, but I'll let you respond.
Well, absolutely. We call it average handling time. I think that's one of the top matrices in the contact center domain. So yeah, very, very eager to have solutions which could reduce AHT. In other words, it's a solution which is going to address productivity or cost efficiency from a larger business perspective. So absolutely, anything which can reduce AHT is most welcomed. I'm assuming you're sort of leveraging, it's more of an agent SS solution. Although
Yeah,
I don't have a
that's a
context,
follow-up
but yeah.
message which says the solution provides suggestions to the agent, which sort of facilitates a faster resolution.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. That's bang on.
Okay, lovely. There's one more founder, Bibhuti, who's asking, do front-end contact center agents further specialize in a particular product or a process? Or are all the agents supposed to be talking to all kinds of customers and resolve all sorts of queries? He wants to understand if there is a segmentation of agents from a voice perspective.
A very good question. So how this is broadly structured is, so overall, we've got, so voice serves multiple markets. It could be, let's say, Vodafone UK, Vodafone Germany, Vodafone Spain, right? So we've first, segregation happens via markets. So agents are put onto a particular market. Now, within a market, you've got two broad segments, which is the front office and the back office. Within front office, you've got two channels, which is voice and web chat. And then you've got the back office as a channel. Now, within each of these, let's say, channels, which is voice, web chat, and back office, you've got multiple sub-processes, right? It could be credit, it could be billing, it could be technical complaints, it could be something else. So an agent is put to a one particular process and trained, given capabilities to handle that particular process. Can agents be trained across processes? The answer is yes, but currently they work on particular processes. Hope that helps.
Super. No, I'm sure it does. And there are also some more questions coming through. There's a startup founder called Nishtha, and Nishtha asks, are you also looking at solutions in the context of screening and shortlisting agents for hiring?
Yeah. So Nishtha, very, very good question. One of the key themes, so within Edge, we've sort of divided into various themes. One of the key themes for us is recruitment reimagined. What does it mean? It means, could we make the entire recruitment life cycle contactless, humanless? Could the recruitment cycle be faster, cheaper, and enable a quality recruitment? So the entire recruitment life cycle, right from your uh, uh, let's say search, selection, onboarding, learning and development. I think the entire process could be disrupted, and we are really eager to look at solutions across the life cycle.
All right. Perfect. So I think there are no more questions at this point. Would you want to go and touch upon the other use case?
Sure. The second use case is talent Uberization. So everybody, I think this is one of the biggest disruptions, not just for voice, not just for Vodafone, not just for the telecom industry or the shared services industry, but I think for the entire workforce management, right? So imagine, I'm sure, how does the Uberization touch upon the blue collar workforce? Now, let me give you some cases. Let's say, imagine somebody sitting in Kenya, has got good software engineering capabilities. Can he or she plug into a platform and work for voice, let's say 4 hours a day for 3 days, Monday, Thursday, and Friday? Somebody else, let's say sitting in part of Europe, who could speak great German, could he or she become a German contact center agent? Or anybody, let's say sitting in Pakistan, for example, has got great program management capabilities, could they work for voice? What essentially we are trying to do is we are trying to make the workforce management boundary-less, and that, in my eyes, is one of the biggest revolution which is going to happen in the HR domain in the next 4 to 5 years. Voice wants to be one of the early adopters or pioneers in this domain. We want to make our hiring truly global, boundaryless. Now, another aspect to sort of look at is the traditional hiring has its own share of limitation. It's time consuming. We talked about speed to competency, searching through various, getting a quality candidate takes weeks and sometimes months, right? It's very, very time consuming. Lots of overhead costs. Let's say you've hired an employee, the project's not happening, or it's slow, and there is lean times, there is bench times, and so on and so forth. There are geographical constraints. Today, if let's say, for example, voice in India location has to hire, they look at candidates from India. Why not somebody sitting in Germany could work for voice, for example, right? So there are geographical constraints, and of course there are fixed employment commitments. Could we sort of disrupt this whole traditional hiring and make it plug and play? Anybody sitting anywhere, having the skill sets, having the intent to work, could plug on to the voice gig platform or talent Uberization platform and deliver services. Now we're quite open. Of course, this is a large space, and I think to solve a use case like something like this would need multiple solutions or great collaborations from multiple startups. But what all domains does it need? The first aspect is the talent sourcing and matchmaking. Can anybody across the globe, with skill sets get hooked onto this platform? And I imagine, an AI-powered platform which could match make, let's say, which could be a cupid between the skill sets and the aspiration of this gig workforce, who could be the freelancers, the contractors, could be even the youth, right? Let's say somebody is working in colleges or studying, could do a part-time opportunity with voice. It could be a housewife. It could be a retired military professional, or it could be somebody who's got the skill set and currently unemployed, right? So it could be host array of people who could sort of work or get hooked onto this platform. So the first bit in terms of the life cycle is the talent sourcing and matchmaking. The second is trust and quality assurance. Now, one key challenge with regards to the talent Uberization is, hey, you've got a candidate, let's say, sitting in Kenya. Is the profile genuine? Is the candidate genuine? Are the documents provided genuine? Is the candidate actually in Kenya or working from somewhere else? Now, these are challenges of a gig platform, and we're looking at mechanisms which could sort of build that trust and quality assurance. For example, something simple, which has now become the common thing in the startup world, is the geoping. You could assess the location of a particular individual, and similarly other technologies with regards to that. The third component is project management and collaboration. Imagine these gig workforce working assigned gig opportunities. How do you project manage them? How do you allocate them work? How do you measure their performance? How do you monitor their performance? How do you give feedback? How do you ensure the closure of this gig opportunity? So the entire project management life cycle needs to be there on the gig platform. Compensation and payment. This is not as simple as making a payment, because there are local or geographical or country-wise regulations and laws. So can this gig platform be compliant to all labor laws across the globe? So that's another thing. How do you make payments to it? How do you make international transactions, transfers, and so on and so forth? Compliance and legal consideration, performance tracking and evaluation, very, very important. You've hired somebody. How do you measure monitor performance? How do you look at their historic performance? How do you segregate, for example, something classic example of a Zomato delivery guy? You've got ratings, right? Now, how do you know a gig workforce has done well in the past? Their historical trends, their historical performances, their skill sets. They take on more projects with voice. They're enhancing their skill sets. Could they be better leveraged? So the performance tracking and monitoring module is going to take care of that. So yeah, that's a quick overview about our vision is to make hiring boundaryless, truly global. If you look at from a employee's perspective, right, today the global workforce needs work-life balance, needs flexibility, and we believe, being one of the leaders of the shared services operation, the future lies in the talent Uberization. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Clearly, a plethora of solutions that could address this objective of yours, Dilip, and thanks for walking us through. Now, I was thinking adjacencies or maybe even extension to what you described, let's say in the context of project planning. It could even be to the extent of, let's say, sort of looking at a predicted demand of workforce and then resource planning. Right. Again, these are extensions to the same topic that you just described, but then there could be so many layers of predictive modeling that could come in and could add value to what you all are wanting to achieve, isn't it?
Well, that's a wonderful point that you brought upon, and I think we must add this to what we're sort of looking at. One of the big challenges for a shared services operation or for any employer is in services in the services domain, is how do you map the talent versus demand, right? Or supply versus demand. Now, we've got customers across the globe, which is the Vodafone, since we are captive in nature. So Vodafone entities, there are projects keep coming in. And at Voice, we do not have a bench policy, for example, right? How do you manage this? On the other hand, you're plagued with the problem of attrition. So given all of this, if we could rely on alternate workforce models like gig platforms, I think and built with predictive modeling of supply versus demand. And I think that could be the next revolution in the shared services domain. Not just that, but overall HR management space.
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions, Dilip. So one from Viplav again is asking, is the gig platform of voice, is it going to be an IP of Vodafone, or is voice going to fund the potential startup, the winning startup, let's say, to build it? It's a question of IP, really. Funding is the other question.
Okay. I think a very, very good question, right? And my answer is we're quite open to it. At Voice and at Edge, particularly, we are quite open to collaboration. We believe now this could be a platform which we take as a service. That's option number one. It could also be that we sort of look at acquiring the entire IP, so completely voice proprietary solution. Or it could be the third option, which is voice partnering with the startup and co-launching this. So there are three models existing. It's very difficult. It's a good question. It's a tricky question. But my answer to this is we are open to all the three models and we are open to experimentation. On the funding bit, as it's a part of the challenge and otherwise, Edge is quite keen to collaborate with startups. And if we find a startup and its solution conducive, which we believe could add value to Voice and Vodafone at large, we would sort of fund them for the pilot to start with, right? And if pilot is successful, then it could be scaled across Voice in the larger ecosystem.
All right, great. I have a comment and a follow-up question, Dilip. I'm sure it will be valuable for the startups. One is in terms of the willingness to be open to discuss and understand how the IP bit is going to be addressed is really the key here, because oftentimes we see there's a lot of rigidity and prejudice when it comes to how IP is to be handled, and it's really heartening to see you talk about your willingness to discuss it with the startup, because after all, the startup is building it, but then it's not entirely, there's a lot of co-creation happening, so we're sort of figuring out in the process. And I think that's really going to be the key when it comes to how the pilot project and potentially what is developed as a part of the pilot project will be of much clarity when it comes to IP related questions that everybody's thinking about at this point in time. On the funding bit, thanks for talking about your willingness as an organization to fund these pilots, specifically to the winning startups. Then if you were to suggest what sort of funding is likely to be, it would be useful for startups to know, if you can mention any number of sorts.
Okay. So typically, and of course we are open to extend the limit, but typically we describe an experiment with a duration of 3 months, and roughly, I think a 10 lakhs, let's say paid pilot or a paid experiment, that's roughly around 100K euros. So that's typically the amount. But yeah, we are quite open to sort of look at if there are solutions that needs more funding to start with for a small pilot, with a duration of 3 months. And if it's successful, then of course the scope of the engagement would be much larger.
All right. Thanks for answering that, Dilip. There's one more question from Maneet. He had asked an earlier question, but then I'll park that for a little later because it's slightly more broader in terms of its scope. But his recent question is talking about an AI-powered solution for training the agents. But he says for making this very specific to the telecom sector and the use cases, or at least the kind of conversations that happen in your space. He's wondering if during the course of the pilot building, perhaps would there be access to the customer care transcripts or recordings, which will of course be very much valuable. He's also saying that he is cognizant of the fact that a non-disclosure agreement will need to be signed, and at least the willingness is there from their end to sign that.
Okay, I think a very very good question, because data sharing and voice being voice, part of the Vodafone ecosystem, and we truly believe that being secure and safe is our license to operate, and hence we give a lot of importance to data confidentiality and what kind of data is shared. Answering your question, would we be able to share customer transcripts? Perhaps the answer would be no, but are there means around to share data which would enable you to train your ML models? Absolutely, yes. In the past and currently also, we are working with startups sharing data which could train, for example, let's take a classic example of customer care. What kind of questions would be asked for a particular process? What should be the agent respond? And feeding in some data to that, we could definitely do that. Would it be a direct customer transcript? Perhaps no, to start with.
All right. I think that is useful. If not, please do ask a follow-up question, Maneet. Now, there's one more question coming through. This is Vipla who says, we already submitted our application and that they have a complete concept built around the gig platform. How can we share this information? So, Viplav, this is a question that I can answer and I can take. So, if you have already submitted your application, then please do wait for the evaluation process to complete. So, the applications are right now open until the September of 20th, after which we will commence the evaluation process. And this evaluation process will culminate towards the mid of October, after which the shortlisted entries for both the use cases will be given an opportunity to present their case to a jury, from Voice, and that will happen across a 3-week period, not entirely for one startup, but for all the shortlisted startups. And then I think by early November, we should be in a position, to pick a very select few startups that will go on to present their solutions to a higher level jury. And this is going to be towards the mid of November. The specific dates are on the challenge website, and I will ask my colleague Kriti to type out the challenge website in the chat in case you've not already have gone through this.
And
Okay,
I'd just like to add one thing to Praveen. While the innovation challenge states that there are going to be only two winners, but let me assure you guys, if we see startups and solutions more than two who could add value to Voice, and we are more than willing to work with even multiple startups. But it may not be just limited to two, but two is an assurity. But could it be four? Absolutely yes.
Right. Thanks. Really heartening to hear that, Dilip. And I guess the willingness is also stemming from the fact that there are multiple nuances to each use case, and that allows for individual and unique solutions to still be able to contribute to a specific use case while still being distinctly different from the other. That is really, really good to know. Thanks for highlighting that, Dilip. So I also wanted to do a quick Q&A, Dilip, which is something which I'm sure it would be of value to the startups. And one of those questions which I thought I would ask was already asked by one of the attendees today. So I specifically wanted you to spend time about any instances wherein external innovation was brought into the Vodafone or the Voice ecosystem. And also, given the fact that the startup founders and their teams are listening to this, it will be useful for them to know how Vodafone goes about the process of internalizing such external innovations.
I think there are multiple such use cases where we've collaborated with the outside world, and we've started with a small experiment and then scaled it up across Vodafone, right? Now, let me take few examples in terms of the key themes that we've been the team sort of working this year, right? One is, of course, recruitment reimagined. I talked about how do we make the entire recruitment cycle humanless? How do we drive faster, cheaper, and quality recruitment? So we've been collaborating with a lot of startups in that space who've got their solutions powered by AI and ML, who are disrupting right from onboarding to even sourcing. We've tried on, across social media, AI-powered, platforms, which could sort of do a very targeted brand campaigns for us. Another key theme for us is how do you disrupt processes for future growth? In short, how do you improve productivity? And a very, very interesting startup that we've collaborated, it's a German-based startup. It's in the domain of attention computing, right? So essentially, the whole use case is about how do you, so imagine 3 to 4 years later, the human machine interaction would be powered or fueled by the power of eyes, touch, gaze, and voice. Now we've collaborated with the startup where we're leveraging the power of eye. So with the eye, and now as I'm speaking, I don't use my mouse or I don't use anything. Through the eyes, I could control the the laptop, right? And what it does is two things. One, because it's going to bring down keyboard to mouse transitions, it could bring enhanced productivity by 4 to 5%. The second use case is, could it give a second life to people who have spinal cord or rehabilitated abilities to come and work. Similarly, we've been experimenting in the domain of metaverse. How do we leverage metaverse to disrupt employee engagement right from induction, training? We've done recruitment events, we've done engagement events, we've done rewards and recognition. So we're big time leveraging metaverse. We're also partnering with another startup, which is an AI powered conversational AI, right? Imagine 30,000 workforce distributed across the globe. The ratio of employee to HR is very high. In this domain, could a conversation AI, which is human-like, empathetic, who listens to employees, could have these chats with the employees across the globe, millions of chats, do sentiment analysis, and throw gold mine of insights with an attrition predictor. So that's another very, very interesting technology that we're sort of working on. We're also looking at next level of solutions in the domain of employee wellness. So we're partnering with a lot of startups who've got this EEG devices, which could track brain activities, understand the pressure, gauge the pressure levels, the alertness levels, the functioning of the brain, and it's like building a brain gem of the future. So whole round of technologies ranging from AI, ML, generative AI is another space which sort of taken a baby step in that direction. We have collaborated with a startup, and the experiment's called Chief Knowledge Officer, right? So you've got tons and tons of data. Could we have a conversation AI very similar to powered by, let's say, the GPT of the world, and could it summarize the information for the new joinees or even people who want to learn? So whole range of technologies and startups across the globe. We are working right from AI, ML, attention computing, metaverse, conversation AI, generative AI, and lot many things. And there are multiple use cases I can keep sharing, but these are some of the exciting work which is happening. Gamification is another key area for us. We are looking at how do we enhance employees' experience through gamification. So lots of startups are collaborating with us with the next level of solutions. One more experiment that comes to my mind is called Talent Tinder, a futuristic, like you have the gig platform. Could we have a similar platform for internal employees to take up gig opportunities within Vodafone ecosystem? So that's another experiment which is ongoing. So lots of exciting things across the globe, and all our collaborations with the startups. At Voice within Edge, we've taken a conscious call, and we are very, very open in terms of ideas, in terms of partnership models, in terms of funding, in terms of mentorship. We are an innovation hub, and we are more than willing to partner with startups in different capacities, different partnership models. If you've got the fire in the belly, you've got the right idea, if you want to make a monumental impact, here's the opportunity.
Super. Dilip, clearly a lot of variety and technology, variety in terms of technologies, but also in terms of the use cases that you are looking at and considering when it comes to external innovations. Very nice to know. Now, maybe a follow-up question is typically right from the time of you interacting with the startup for the first time to finally integrating a solution at a scale level. What sort of timeline do you see happen at Vodafone? And maybe if there are any other nuances around that, do you want to touch upon it?
Very interesting question, Praveen. From an edge perspective, we have divided the journey of a startup into three phases. The phase one is called the experimentation phase. It's typically for a duration of 3 months. And of course, we fund that 3 months. We define key success criteria. It's very important. And I'm going to touch upon maybe if we have time in terms of, this is one aspect that I look in startups or startup founder is the data-driven approach. But having said that, the success criteria is defined. And if the success criteria is met, then we look at scalability to the next phase. So first phase is the experiment phase. Typically, we use dummy data, or it could be dummy user accounts. It's a quick dip check in terms of whether this technology or startup could add value. The second stage is called POC. POC could again be a 3-month or a 4-month sort of an engagement where we take live users and experiment with them. It could be a service line, it could be a business division or a unit, and there's going to be a live real-time real data of employees and real users. The third, and if that success criteria is also met, then we look at scalability. Scalability, of course, voice being voice, it's a close to 30,000 workforce. So scalability happens in phases. Typically, it could start with a 1 year sort of an engagement with, let's say, 5, 6, 7, or maybe 10,000 employees, and then in phase 2 we could sort of look at the entire voice population, and phase 3 could be then the larger Vodafone ecosystem if it adds value. But yeah, just to summarize this, a quick dip check with regards to experimentation and POC, and then the scalability happens. So essentially, after 6 months, a startup is ready to scale up with regards to its collaboration with voice.
All right. That's very helpful. I'm sure founders and the participants in this webinar also are able to relate to the kind of timelines and sort of picture their own journey as they get going with Vodafone. So there's what about little less than 10 minutes to go. There are 3 questions, and Dilip, I would request this to be in a rapid fire format, and also a request to the other attendees, if there are more questions, feel free to ask, and we'll try to accommodate as much as we can in the remaining time that is available. So there is a startup founder called Santosh from a startup called Zebu. He says, do we need a working POC for the submission? Dilip?
Santosh, good question. The answer is no. While we would prefer a working POC, at least so you have time. So there are 3 phases of this innovation challenge, at least in the phase 2, and I'm sure I'll leave it to Praveen to sort of elaborate more on that. There should be some sort of a working POC, because at the end of this challenge, which is the duration of, let's say, 3 months, we are very keen to begin implementation. So if you don't have a working POC by then, how do we begin implementation? Does it answer, Praveen? Or
I'm sure it does, but at the same time, we've seen startups, with these concepts get ready in a month's time. So if in the first phase, while your approach may be indicated, but then if there is some understanding around maybe some working prototype at a high level that's visible for the evaluators, and then some promise and potential of that getting ready for the next stage, then it sort of also tends to qualify. There is time. Clearly, there is a month that's available until after which you will really start let's say process of engaging with the voice team in much more level of detail, right? So I think it can be seen as an opportunity, but then you'll have to really focus on building it up. So that possibility is also there. But then those who already have something similar and maybe some small tweaks obviously stand a better chance in terms of their value proposition, and also the kind of effort that they may need to expend to become more eligible to this particular challenge. But then even those who aren't but feel that there can be some level of adaptation, I think this is also a very good opportunity. You should definitely think of that.
Just one line. Round 1 is the concept notes. So even if you don't have a let's say working POC, your concept note is good enough. And let's say if you get selected, I've seen startup founders coming up with a solution in a week's time, a few night outs, and the solution sort of ready. So yeah, like Praveen said, you do have time. But round two, we would want to see something working. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. So the not follow-up, another question that's coming from Maneet again, and he says, having um, worked in the telecom industry for 10 years, just pushing the envelope again on the access to the actual transcripts. He says that derived data would be helpful, but it tends to be sanitized and might not allow for these specific nuances of conversations to be captured in the training. So he's saying, could we consider transcripts that are devoid of any PIIs, for example?
We can. So like I said earlier, there are ways to sort of look at it. So if there is no PII involved in terms of, so PII is personally identifiable information. So the customer's information. So there are ways we could sort of look at and enabling you, because from a voice perspective, it's a responsibility to enable you with data, and we are conscious of that. And we would work together in terms of providing you what's required to train your AI and ML model.
Right. Nishtha again, she asks, is there any minimum revenue requirement for startups to apply for this challenge?
No. So Nishta, great question. No, there is no, they say, right? I mean, somebody doesn't have an experience in the job and you ask them, hey, do you have experience? And only then I'm going to hire you. So the answer is very similar. There is the good news for you is there is no minimum revenue requirement. What we sort of look at as a working, operating, prototype or a solution which could add value. We definitely would look at your founding team. If you do not have, so revenue is a credibility assessment, right? In my opinion, if you do not have a revenue, we would look at the founding team, the credibility that you have, the passion that you have for this solution, and if all of this in place, you need not worry.
Thanks for that reassurance, Dilip. I think there are a lot of good solutions that are out there, and essentially a good opportunity is what they look out for. And your willingness to consider even such solutions based on team's potential and the product's potential is really good to see that. Dilip, I think we've come to the end of the webinar. Quite